To operate effectively, a manufacturing firm must have systems that allow it to efficiently accomplish its type of production. Production system consists of people, equipment, and procedures designed for the combination of material and processes that constitute a firm manufacturing operation. Production systems can be divided into two categories: production facilities and manufacturing support system. Production facilities refer to the physical equipment and the arrangement of equipment in the factory, while manufacturing support systems are the procedure used by the company to manage production and solve the technical and logistic problem encountered in ordering material, moving work through the factory, and ensuring that product meets quality standard. Both categories include people. People make the system work. In general, direct labor workers are responsible for operating the manufacturing equipment, and professional staff workers are responsible for manufacturing support. Production facilities consist of the factory and the production, material handling, and other equipment in the factory. The equipment comes in direct physical contact with the part and assembly as they are being made. The facility touch the product. Facilities also include the way the equipment is arranged in the factory, which called the plant layout. The equipment is usually organized into logical grouping, which can be called manufacturing system, such as an automated production line or a machine cell consisting of an industrial robot and two machine tools. A manufacturing company attempts to design its manufacturing system and organize its factories to serve the particular mission of each plant in the most efficient way. Over the years, certain types of production facilities have come to be recognized as the most appropriate way to organize for a given combination of product variety and production quantity. Different types of facilities are required for each of the three range of annual production quantities, which is low quantity production, medium quantity production, and high production. Manufacturing support systems. To operate its facilities efficiently, a company must organize itself to design the processes and equipment, plan and control the production orders, and satisfy product quality requirements. These functions are accomplished by manufacturing support system, which is people and procedure by which a company manages its production operation. Most of the support systems do not directly contact the product, but they plan and control its progress through the factory. Manufacturing support functions are often carried out in the firm by people organized into departments such as manufacturing engineering department, production planning and control department, and quality control department. For the manufacturing engineering department, this department is responsible for planning the manufacturing process, which are deciding what process should be used to make the parts and assemble the products. This department is also involved in designing and ordering the machine tools and other equipment used by the operating departments to accomplish processing and assembly. Production Planning and Control Department. This department is responsible for solving the logistic problem in manufacturing, ordering material and purchase part, schedule production, and making sure that the operation departments have the necessary capacity to meet the production schedule. Quality Control Department. This department producing high quality product. Quality Control Department. Producing high quality product should be a top priority of any manufacturing firms in today's competitive environment. It means designing and building products that conform to specification and satisfy or exceed customer expectation. Much of this effort is the responsibility of the QC department.
Okay, this slide you see main types of layout. You have manufacturing layout. Within manufacturing layouts, you have three different kinds of layouts. One is a process layout where the layout is based on the different processes. And a typical name for that type of layout is a job shop. Then you have almost a diametrically opposite kind of layout called a product layout, which is based on the kind of product that you're producing. And a typical name for that is assembly line, right from the time of Henry Ford. There you have continuous and repetitive kind of manufacturing. And in a job shop, you typically have small batches that you're producing. A third kind of manufacturing layout is called the cellular layout, which again we discussed in lean operations. And it is kind of a hybrid of process and product kind of layouts. Okay, here you see a schematic of a typical job shop or a process layout. You can see that on one side you have all the lathes, that is the turning department or the lathe department. You have a department for milling, you have a department for drilling, you have a department for grinding, painting, assembly, on and on. So here you can see those arrows going back and forth. What that depicts is the flow of products. So here you can pretty much produce any product you want, which require a set or a subset of activities or processes that you're capable of. So you may require one product that needs to be turned, milled, grinded, inspected, and out. Another product may have to be drilled, grinded, painted, out. You can do any one of these. And if you look at this, the layout is based on different processes that you're capable of. You can even look at a supermarket to be like a process layout, because there is a dedicated area for produce. There is a dedicated area for appliances, dedicated area for men's clothes. A department store is a process layout. A typical cafeteria in a university has a process layout where you may have one place where you get pizza, another place where you get subs and sandwiches, another place where you may have a Chinese counter. So that is a process layout. If a student wants to go and get some Chinese and then go and get some fries, he or she needs to go to those two dedicated areas or processes. So a job shop is where every area is dedicated to a particular process. Now look at an example of an assembly line, an actual shot of an assembly line, where you have multiple cars being produced there, all in line, in one line. Unlike in a job shop, all the products, every unit that you're producing goes through the same sequence of steps. In this case, you have robotic arms doing some assembly, and maybe in some cases some welding, some kind of painting also. But in many assembly lines, you may not have automation like you see in this picture. You may have people, workers, or a combination of workers and robots doing the assembly. But the key here is all the products, all the units are going through the same sequence of steps, unlike in a job shop. And we'll understand this in more detail in a few minutes. And An assembly line is typically used in most automobile production, laptops, and like I said, even some of the aircrafts. Now let us understand in more detail the difference between a process and a product layout. If you look at the process layout, you typically produce customized products there. These are not products that you will make to stock. You typically make to order. Whereas in the product layout, you typically produce standardized products, make to stock. In a process layout, you have functional grouping of activities. That is, there is a dedicated area for grinding, welding, so on. A dedicated area for Chinese food, for pizza, for subs. Whereas in the product layout, there is a sequential arrangement of activities. That also we saw in the car assembly line. Let me give another simple example. A McDonald's drive-up service. If you go in your car and you want to buy something in McDonald's, you have to go through the same sequence of steps. Order the food, pay the money in the second window, third window, you pick up your food. It doesn't matter whether you're buying 5 burgers and nuggets and fries, or you're just picking up 1 drink. You have to go through this set of activities. Each product in the job shop or the process layout is different. An assembly line. And the routing required to make that product analogy of an assembly line. Whereas, as I already have mentioned, it's a fixed path or fixed route in an assembly line. A process layout is acceptable, is required when the demand is low. You cannot afford to have an assembly line when you have a very low demand, and if the demand is fluctuating a lot. Whereas, once you know that you have a high demand and stable demand, you can justify having a product layout or an assembly line. In a process facility, the kind of equipment will be more general purpose. Again, because you're making different products. Whereas in an assembly line, it is going to be special purpose equipment specially made for that particular product. When you change the product a lot, like in a new kind of car, the design is completely different, the process is different, then you have to change the special purpose equipment. In a process layout, the fixed costs are low, but the variable costs are high. On the other hand, in the product layout, the fixed costs are high because you're using special purpose equipment. The initial investment will be high, but the advantage is the variable costs are low. That is what made Henry Ford's Model T so popular. Henry Ford was able to pay the highest wages during his time and still make the least expensive vehicle. The single most important reason for that was the variable costs were low. But of course, the product line was only one. He did not make different kinds of products. The last bullet, the labor skills required in a process layout are much higher and much varied as compared to the product layout, where most of the assembly line workers are working on one workstation and they're focusing on one thing. It is monotonous, unfortunately, in most assembly lines, but the skill level required is not as high as in a process layout. In a process kind of layout or a job shop, the work in process inventory is higher. You have a lot of inventory within the facility. Whereas in a product layout, you design the layout in such a way, you balance the assembly line in such a way that the work in process inventory is 0 to very little. Okay, you don't want to have work in process inventory or bottlenecks. Scheduling, which is another chapter in our course, where we discuss about scheduling. In a job shop, scheduling becomes extremely important. Who is going to work where, in what sequence, and so on. Whereas in a product layout, scheduling is routine. Like I said, the same assembly line workers are going to work at the same workstation doing the same thing whenever the next product comes in. So it is relatively routine and easier. But there are other complex issues in a product layout. Estimating the cost to produce each product in a process layout can be a little more involved, a little more difficult than in a product layout. The most important objective in a process layout is where to locate each of the machines so that material handling is minimized, so that it makes logical sense to put two different kinds of processes or machines or work centers right next to each other. How do you do that? That is the single most important consideration. Whereas if you look at the product layout, you have no choice of where to put the machines because they have to be in the sequence in which that particular product requires those machines or processes. What is more important there is to balance the assembly line, which is the next topic we'll discuss. In a process layout, you want to minimize the material handling, whereas in a product layout, like I said, balancing the assembly line is the same as equalizing work at each station. You don't want one workstation to take 10 minutes to do all the things that are required, whereas the next workstation requires only 8 minutes. And you don't want the reverse either. You don't want the first workstation to take 8 minutes, the second one to take 10 minutes. As far as possible, you want all the work centers to take the same amount of time in theory. In practice, almost the same amount of time so that it is all balanced. It is synchronous. Finally, what is the real strength of an assembly line? Efficiency. The product layout is known for efficiency. That is the reason that people want to have an assembly line when they have high demand, stable demand. And what is the single most important advantage of a process layout or a job shop? It's the flexibility. Job shops are not efficient, but highly flexible, whereas product layouts are highly efficient, but inflexible. I hope you understand now the difference between a job shop / process layout and a product layout / assembly line.